Hello everyone, welcome to Teacher Dennis Kruger channel. Today you will be mastering spreadsheet formulas and functions. I'll also share with you Excel tips and tricks, perhaps to make you a very powerful computer student. In this video, we'll be sharing on how to use basic arithmetic operations. How do we add, how do we subtract, how do we multiply, and how do we divide with ease. I'll also be sharing with you how to perform calculations using functions for data analysis. You'll discover how to use sum, average, max, and min function to summarize and analyze your data effectively. I'll also be demonstrating to you how to rank data, and you learn how to rank values in your spreadsheets using rank functions. I will demonstrate to you how to count data. While we do that, you'll explore the count and the COUNTIF functions that will help you to tally values and apply conditioning counting. We'll summarize our video while discussing how to work out conditional summation. I would love that you master how to use the SUMIF functions to sum data based on specific criteria. So let's get started. I have a simple folder. You remember continually we have looked at file management. It is important to organize your files in the folder. So I have a folder here. In the previous video, I've demonstrated to you, I've introduced you to Excel basics, creating workbook, creating worksheets, and I have a simple workbook here called performing calculation that we are going to utilize. Now, this is our file. We've looked at how to enter data, and I believe at such a time you know how to enter data. I hope so. So, to move on, how we perform calculations. There are two ways in how we can perform calculations. We can perform calculation using formulae and using functions. A formula is a mathematical expression used to perform calculation. And when performing calculation using formulae, we use operators. An operator is a mathematical expression used to perform calculation. Some of the examples of arithmetic operators here include, we have the percentage operator, and in the precedence, it normally takes 1. That means if you include it in an expression, Excel will compute it first. Then you have exponential as an arithmetic operator. It's also among the first in the level of precedence. We have the asterisk, commonly known as the star. We use it as a multiplication operator. We have the forward slash, which we use as the division operator. We have the plus that we use for addition. And then finally we have the subtraction, the minus, which we use for subtraction. Now these are examples of arithmetic operators. We'll explore other operators in the upcoming video. Now, to perform calculation using formulae or function, there are very many rules to follow, but let me give two simple major rules. Rule number 1, you'll always begin your formula or function with an equal sign. And rule number 2, we use the cell addresses instead of values when performing calculation. I have a simple budget here that includes item, quantity, unit price, and total price. So while I decide perform calculation, I click in a cell which is to take the calculation. In this case, mathematically, I'm supposed to first go through how do I get total price here in a budget where I have quantity and unit price. So the expression to be utilized here is a product. I'm supposed to multiply the contents of cell B3 with the contents of cell C3 to get the total price for sugar. But like we said, begin the formula with an equal sign. Then number 2, use the cell addresses. You simply click on the value you're multiplying, and then the ultimate next thing is the operator. For multiplication, we use the star. So I put my star, then I click on the other value. So our formula is equals B3 times C3. If I press enter, I'll get the total price, which is the product. If I click on it here, in the formula bar, you can see it. We looked at the formula bar before and said the formula bar displays the formula or the contents of the cell. Using the autofill handle, I can click on this answer and then locate the autofill handle, and thereafter drag it down so that I can recalculate. Here it was in cell D3, the formula was equals B3 times C3. In the next cell, the formula is B4 times C4 accordingly. Now to obtain the total value here, I'm supposed to add, because this is overall total in our budget, that will be obtained by adding the total price for sugar, total price for rice, total price for maize. Like we said, after clicking the cell, you're going to put the answer, begin with the equal sign. That's a must for Excel to know you're performing calculation. Next thing, use the cell addresses. So I click on the value I'm adding, put my operator, which is a plus sign for addition, don't forget. Then click on the other value, which I'm adding, put the operator, which is the plus, and then click the other value. So I'm adding D3 plus D4 plus D5. And after I've written properly, I press enter. And wow, that is our total. We've utilized the product here, and we have used the star or the asterisk operator, and then the plus for addition. I want us to try difference. Now, I'm supposed to get the difference here, and difference means I'm going to subtract this value with this value. So, rule number 1, begin with the equal sign, click on the value that you wish to utilize in the expression, put the operator. We agreed for subtraction, we use minus, and then click on the other value. If I press enter, I'll get the answer. So we can make any formula of our choice using the operators: plus, addition, minus, subtraction, asterisk, multiplication, and so on. I want to change this one to quotient in case I was supposed to divide. Where I'm dividing, I put the equal sign, click on the value. Automatically Excel will reference the right cell address. You can always just select by clicking on the value, and Excel automatically put the cell reference. Then our operator, in our case, is a /. Then I click the other value I'm dividing with. So if I press enter, I'll get the value. 50 divided by 25 is 2. So you can continue using any other operator of your choice to perform calculation. Okay, that is all with the basic arithmetic operators: the plus, the minus, subtraction, the division, and others. Well, in the next part here, I would wish us to share how we can perform calculation on a mark sheet. I have a demo mark sheet here, and well, I'm supposed to obtain the total, obtain the average, obtain the maximum, the mean, the mode, and so on. So, well, you can either use formulas or you can use functions. Well, if you're using a formula, the process remains the same. You click where the value is going to be placed, where the answer is going to be put the equal sign, click on the value you're adding, put the operator, click on the value you're adding, put the operator, click on the value, put the operator, and click on the other value. So after the equal sign, you select the cells you're adding by clicking on them, and then add the operator. When you're done, you press enter. That's how we get the total. The same would be used for average here. Average means the mean. The normally we obtain it by adding the values divided by the number of the values. So we'll put the equal sign, click on the total because that is the summation of the values, put the operator in that case, which is the forward slash, our division operator, and the number for the subject is 1, 2, 3, 4. If I press enter, I'll get the average. So that's how we can use formulas and using basic arithmetic operators. Well, I wish to share with you how we can use functions for data analysis. While performing your data analysis, you may be required to do the sum, you do the average, the max, the mean. That is to summarize and analyze your data effectively. So how do we use functions? Before I skip in that, there's some hack, some tip I wanted to share with you. Excel has inbuilt functions that can help you to simplify calculation. If I highlight the data and I look at the status bar, Excel gives me, you can observe, I highlight the status bar right now is displaying the average of that value, displaying the count, the values are 4, the mean is 45, the max is 89, and the sum is 27. How am I getting this? You can always take your cursor to the status bar, right click and tick on any summarized statistic you wish Excel to display. You can highlight the data you want Excel to compute out for you or analyze for you, and automatically after you have highlighted, look at the status bar. Excel will do quick calculation to give you statistics. Hope you knew that. It's a good tip and hack for you. But well, let's look at how to perform calculation using functions. Again, we will begin our function with equal sign. That is a very, very powerful rule that at all times you should not forget. Now, when obtaining total, the function name we use is known as sum. So you write SUM. Again, another very important tip is when we write the function, Excel will always give us the syntax, and the syntax or the arrangement can always help us when writing function. For this sum, inside the brackets, the function argument include the number you're adding, separated with a comma, and then the other number, and so on. So there are basically 3 parts of the function. The first part is the equal sign. The second part is the function name. Then in pair of parentheses or brackets, you put the function argument. The argument varies from function to function, but don't get worried. Excel always guides you on how to write your function argument. So here in brackets, I can use my mouse to click on the cell that I'm adding, put a comma, click on another cell, put a comma, click on another cell, put a comma, and then click on the other cell. That close bracket. So equals sum, then inside the bracket we have put the function argument separating with the comma operator. And finally I press enter to get the equal sign, and that is the same answer we obtained like in the previous case. Okay, well, that is one way of writing. I'll undo that. The second way is still you write equals SUM, that is our function name, sum for addition, open brackets. Now, instead of writing single numbers as you separate them with commas, you can utilize a range. A range means a combination of adjacent cells. You can, after opening brackets, highlight the marks you're adding. And Excel will automatically compile the range. The range of these marks starts from B2 to E2. So again, another tip for you, how do you make the range? You pick the first cell in a given range, then use the operator, the full colon operator, and then write the last cell. So I would write the first cell in that range, which is B2, put a full colon, and then write E2. And after that, close brackets. equals sum B2 to E2. And I press enter, I obtain sum, and that is our total. I can click on the answer I've obtained, then use the autofill handle to drag my answer elsewhere to obtain it. That's how I would obtain the total for other values. Well, before I sum it up for total and move to something else, I want to show you as well another very important tip or hack. Now, if you want to obtain total quickly here, you can always click where the answer is going to be. That is the first cell, which will take total. And on your keyboard, you press Alt and equals. So you press Alt equals, Excel will automatically write for you the function, and you just press enter to get the equal sign. I hope you like that tip and hack. It's very, very good. So I can click on the answer, down, look for the autofill handle, and drag my formula down. You can either drag, or you can always simply double click when you locate the autofill handle. Okay, next we're going to look at average. And just as we use the formula to perform average, we can use a function to obtain average. Well, the function name we use for average is called average. Again, we click where we're going to put our answer, put the equal sign, and write the function name, which is average. Please, that's the most important thing you should recall. You can pause the video and go through it again. So it is equals average, open parentheses, again in brackets, the arguments. The function argument in this case can be cells separated with commas or a range. For example, after opening brackets, I can click on the mark I want to obtain average, put a comma, click on the other mark, put a comma, click on the other mark, put a comma, and click the other. And when I'm done, close brackets, and I press enter. And that's the average. I can literally also use equals average. That is my function name, equals average, open brackets, and then highlight my marks, equals average, highlight the marks, close brackets, and press enter. The same average has been obtained like we got in the previous case. Well, having got the average, you now click on the answer you've obtained, look for the autofill handle, the black plus sign, and then long press your mouse or drag your formula down to copy the formula elsewhere. That's one way. You can also literally, after looking for the autofill handle, just simply double click. Excel, through the autofill handle, will use that formula to recalculate the rest of other cells. Okay, that's how we obtain total, and that's how we obtain the average. We'll go to max. Now, max is a very important perhaps data analysis tool. The maximum here, we are interested in getting the highest value in a given range. In other words, the biggest or the best mark in a given range. In that case, we'll be getting the best mark for every student. Maximum here, since every row here is representing students in this mark sheet, so maximum here is interested in getting the best mark or the highest mark or the best subject for every student. That is between English, between MTC, between science, between SS and SST. Now, how do we compute maximum? We compute maximum using a function called max. Again, we begin with an equal sign, write the function name, which is max, open brackets, and thereafter, now we shall be using the range. Go and highlight all the subjects of that student. Upon highlighting, like I've guided, Excel will construct for us the range. The range here is between B2 to E2. Like we guided, you can always just pick the first cell, put a full colon, and then click on the last mark or pick the last cell in that range. So I press enter, and well, Abdu got 89 in social studies. Accordingly, if we compare the 4 subjects, this is the best, and that's what maximum helps us to do. Analyze data to obtain the highest or the best mark in that given range. So I can use the autofill handle to autofill the answer elsewhere. Click on the answer, look for the autofill handle, and then double click on it so that that same formula is recalculated. For Ivan, for example, 98 is the highest mark in those subjects. If we analyze, 98 is mathematics. That supposedly means Bio's best mark was in mathematics. Okay, now we move on to the next function, and that is mean. Well, minimum here is to help us analyze data by obtaining the lowest mark in the given range. We would literally say we analyze these marks to obtain or extract out the least mark or the lowest mark the student got. Now, because the marks are very few, I know you would literally say, no, I'll just manually look at this and 45 is the lowest. But take an imagination or an assumption where you have a mark sheet, like for a secondary school, a university student with very many entries. So analyzing manually will take very much time. So in that case, the function can help you with ease to analyze that data. Now, how do we compute the mean? Like we said, step 1, click where you're going to put the answer, put the equal sign, then write the function name. The function name in this case is mean. And then open parentheses, and thereafter go and make your range. You can highlight the marks. Do not make a mistake and highlight the total, the average, because here we're interested in obtaining the lowest mark of that student in those 4 subjects. So I can close brackets, and my function once again is equals mean B2 to F to E2. And I press enter, like earlier on analyzed, 45 is the lowest or the least mark in that range for Madiwa Abdu. Still, I click on this value I've obtained. Use the autofill handle to recalculate. That's by double clicking upon locating it. Now, the next function is mod. Mod is a very powerful function. Again, it helps us here to identify or analyze our data to identify or locate or return the value that had the highest frequency. They had the value that appeared several times. For that case, how do we now compute the mod? Again, click where you're going to put the answer, put your equal sign, and write the function name as mod. Equals mod, open the brackets or parentheses, and then go and highlight your mark. Okay, now after that, close brackets and press enter. Well, we get -NA. Now, -NA is an error that lets you know there is no mod. All values here are appearing once. Let's first copy this everywhere to recalculate. So I click on the answer and then double click on it. You can imagine all of them -NA. Get scared. Now, I have 36. Why are 36 come and others have NA? Let's analyze together. This is Pande Herbert. Pande Herbert in one of the subjects had 36, the other had 78, the other had 68, and the other had 36. So, we can literally agree and conclude that 36 here is appearing because it is appearing twice. So what the mod function is doing in this case is to analyze the data and return to us the values with the highest frequency, values that appear more than the others. Now where all values appear once, Excel will bring that the error #NA. I'll record another separate video to share with you some of the spreadsheet errors, give you acquaintance on how to solve or handle them in case you get them. But here, when you get #NA, I want you to know you are correct. Just that the marks in that given range we are using for the student are appearing once. Okay, let's go to median. Median here would help measure for us central tendency. Mathematically, it would be computed by arranging the values in either ascending order or descending order and then clustering them until we obtain the central values. So how do we compute median? We put the equal sign, write the function which is median. That is very important to note. Open brackets and then highlight your range. Close brackets. Once more, the function has three parts: the equal sign, the function name which is median, the function arguments here. We have used the range, and the range here is the subjects. That's the learner attempted. That is between B2 to E2. When I press enter, the median. In our case, for Madivo, our first student in this mark sheet is 68. You can click on this answer and then double click to copy the answer everywhere using the autofill handle, the black plus, the autofill handle. Well, we're going to look at position order. Before we reach there, I want us to scroll at the bottom and we look at still minimum and maximum here. Please note that the mean and maximum for that, the one we have previously calculated, were helping us to get the highest mark for a given student in those subjects and then the lowest value of a given student. Now we may wish to get the best mark in a given subject. So I have another entry here in cell B18. If you look at my name box here, I've clicked in cell B18 and aside I have minimum. That means I am interested in analyzing this data in this subject to obtain the lowest mark in that subject. I'm interested in knowing the student who had the least mark. Now, what do? I will still use the same function, begin with the equal sign, very important rule. Since we are calculating minimum, our function is mean. Okay? After writing your function, open parentheses, and now form your range. Your range is different from the previous case because this time around we are interested in analyzing data to obtain the lowest mark in that subject. So I will, after opening parentheses, select all the marks in that subject. So that Excel gives me the range. Once more, it is equals mean, then B2 to B16. You can form your range manually if you can't highlight. That means after opening parentheses, you can select the first cell, which is B2, then put a full colon, and then select the last cell. Or just highlight your marks in that very subject. Wow, when I press enter, again, 12 is the lowest mark. Even if we manually looked through it, there is no lower mark than 12. 12 is the lowest. So I can click on this answer again, use the autofill handle, that is the black plus sign you see on my screen, and then drag it horizontally until I cover all the subjects. So that was for English. For math, what only changes is the range, C2 to C16. If I click on the next subject, you'll discover this subject is for science, and the range is D2 to D16. So the columns are changing because they represent the subjects. Now, this analysis can help us know the subject that was least performed for decision making. It's very important. You can now conclude that English had the lowest mark, and such decision, all such information can help you in decision making and report making. Well, let's look at maximum. And maximum, like we said, would help us to analyze data to identify the highest mark, the mark that had more marks, or the biggest mark. You would literally say that same language. And here we are not getting the mark. In the previous case, we got maximum for every student's marks. Like here, in the first case, the maximum 89 was for Abdul's highest mark. In the second, an example of a scenario, we are interested in getting maximum for those subject, the best mark in a given subject. How do we utilize that function to perform calculation? Again, begin with a equal sign, write the function as max, open brackets, and thereafter, inside the parentheses, we put the range. In other words, you can either highlight all the marks in that subject or construct your range manually by identifying the first cell, putting a full colon, and then writing also the last cell address. I've highlighted. Press enter. Wow, you can see in English the best mark was 80. So I can click on this answer, use the autofill handle, that plus sign, and drag elsewhere. Okay, I can discover now that science was the best subject accordingly in terms of the best mark, because it is having 100 as the highest mark, followed by the next subject in that range as mathematics. And then according to this analysis, 80 is the lowest. Okay. Now, in some instances, you may want to count your data. Counting data is a very important analysis function again, because it can help you establish the number of entries, and that perhaps discovery can still help you in presentation of some information to stakeholders. In our case, we already know here the last student is 16 in number, but we may want to know how many students have marks, or how many students here wrote the exams. In our case here, we are going to try out that function in cell B20. So I click in cell B20. So how do we write the function to help us count, to establish number? We put the equal sign, write count, then open brackets, and then after that, go and highlight your marks. Highlight your marks in that range. Close brackets, and then press enter. So according to this analysis, there are 15 entries. Please note, the function I've utilized in our case is equals count, because I am counting or returning the number of cells with values. But where you are interested, this is just a by the way now, where you are interested in counting cells having text, then count will not work. Let's try. I remove this answer, put equals, write count, open brackets, and then instead of highlighting the values here, I'm going to highlight text here. So if I highlight text, the names, then I close brackets and then press enter. You see, I've got 0. Oh, why am I getting 0? Because I am using count to highlight the alphabet. So where you want to count cells that have got alphabets or text or labels, then the best function is not count, but it is counter. You write equals, then after putting the equal sign, write counter. Counter is for alphabets. So if I open brackets, then I go back again and highlight my alphabets here. Of course, to make the range, I'm highlighting the names. Please don't get confused. Close brackets. Once more, it is equals counter, which is our function name. name here, and then A2 to A16. A2 is the range here for the names. So if I press enter, I'll get the same answer like 15. So you use count to establish the number of cells with values. You use counter to establish cells with text, and we also use counter blank if you want to establish cells that are blank. Okay, for blank it is count blank. Maybe I can demonstrate that in the next video as well. Now the other thing is conditional counting. You see here we are counting the cells in a range to determine the number, but you can wish to conditionally count. Perhaps you are interested in marks, perhaps maybe that are above 50, above 80. Let's manually take a simple scenario here. Supposing in English we were interested in counting the students who got above 80. Above 80. So 80 will not be there, meaning we want students who got above 80. That means 81 and above. So if I scroll, okay, this scenario will not be there. Let me put 80 and above. If I'm interested in counting students who got marks, that is 80 and above, this will be 1 mark, the second mark, the third mark, and well, we would have 3, so let's try. How do we conditionally count? I'm going to utilize the cell B21 to write my answer. So I've clicked in that cell, B21. Now, how do I write my function? I write equals, then I put COUNTIF. Please note that Excel will always give you the arguments, like I guided through a tip or a hack. The argument here is we put the range and then the criteria. So equals, the first part, the function is COUNTIF, and our range. So our range here, like we said, is all the marks. So I can go back and highlight all the marks in that range, or I can construct my range manually by identifying the first mark in that range as B2, putting a full colon, and then identifying the last mark in that range as B16. So immediately after I've written the range according to this syntax, the other argument of this function is the criteria, because this is a conditional count. If it was just count, we would close brackets and press enter. But since it is a conditional count, you put the equal sign. In pair of quotes, please open pair of quotes and write your condition. In our case, we are interested in counting marks that are above 80. So in pair of quotes, I've written greater or equal to 80. Once more, let's go through the function. Equals COUNTIF, open brackets, B2 to B16, comma, then in pair of quotes, 80. Well, if I press enter, like we observed previously, there are 3. Now, please be creative through your analysis condition. In case you are counting maybe distinctions, counting marks above a given range, the criteria will stand. Equal sign, COUNTIF the function name, the range, B2 to B16. Your range may vary from situation to situation. You put a comma, then immediately in pair of quotes, you put the criteria. Then close parenthesis and press enter. Now, next is conditional sum. I noted at the very start that there are some instances when you're analyzing data and you want to sum conditionally. In our case, for example, we may be interested in adding marks that are above 80, greater or equal to 80. We've already counted, we have 3 cells that have greater or equal to 80. That is Madio Abdu in English, Yadoga Sharon in English as well, and then Sister Derek also got above 80 and above. Now, in case you want to add conditionally, how do you perform calculation? I am going to utilize the cell of B22 to write my function. So I click in that cell, B22. Thereafter, I put my equal sign. And then after putting the equal sign, I write the function name. So to add conditionally, we use SUMIF. Additional to sum, we add if as a condition. And then open brackets. So again, Excel gives us the range, the criteria here. The function argument, immediately when you open parentheses, what comes first is the range, and then the criteria, and then maybe the sum range. Those are the function arguments that are very important for you to add conditionally. First thing we're going to put is the range. So the range here will include all the marks in class. So form your range either by selecting the cell in that range you want to add, or the cell in this case. Please note that you can also form your range if you don't highlight by identifying the mark in that range, put a full colon, and then also click on the other mark. In our case, we are adding marks for English which are between B2 to B16. Although we are adding conditionally, so immediately after that range, I put a comma. So after putting a comma, again what comes next is the criteria. The criteria is the condition that you wish to allow Excel follow when it is adding. So I can open pair of quotes, then write my condition. So in this case, my condition I would wish to utilize is greater or equal to 80, and I've written it in quotes. I'm going to end the function at that very point. First show you. So it is equals SUMIF B2 to B16, comma, then in pair of quotes, I've written my condition, and there I close. Equals SUMIF, the range, then the criteria. If I press enter, Excel will add. Please, you note that we had 3 students who had 80. 80 plus 80, 160. 160 plus 80, that is 240. Now, add conditionally, please can follow that function. Equals SUMIF, the range, the range, this all the marks in the class, then you put a comma, then in pair of quotes, you put the condition. The same to average. If conditional average, you may want to only find the average of the marks that fit your range. Perhaps in your analysis, you are interested in obtaining the mean or the average conditionally. Now, how do you obtain that? You still put the equal sign, right? Average, if, please, on average, and if as the condition. Then after that, open brackets. Still, the criteria, Excel gives us the argument or the syntax, how this function is supposed to be written. In parentheses, what comes first is the range. Then after a comma, we put the criteria. Then we put the average range as well. So in our case, inside the parentheses, we're going to select all the marks in that subject. Again, the range is the same for all. You note that I've guided you to either always select, and then Excel provides the range. If you can't, then please, in any range, inside the parentheses, identify the first mark, put a full colon, and then put the last mark in that case. So our last mark is 16, B16. It is B2 to B16, B2 to B16. Put a comma, and then in pair of quotation marks, write your condition that you want Excel follow when it is adding. In our case, in a simple scenario, we would want to obtain the average of the marks in this range, that is between B2 to B16, that are greater or equal to 80. And when you're done, you press enter. Excel will get the average of that. 240, the average of these three is 80. That is it. Okay, that is how we can conditionally sum, conditionally take the average, and conditionally take the count. Finally, for our video today, we want to look at how to compute position here. Before we look at how to compute position, I am going to share with you how to types of cell referencing. Now, there are three types of cell referencing. The first cell referencing is called relative reference. A relative reference is a cell address that changes when it is copied to other cells in the spreadsheet. Please just note that I'm going to give a demonstration shortly. We're saying that three types of cell referencing and relative changes when it is copied elsewhere. Another type of cell reference is absolute. And an absolute cell reference is a cell reference that does not change when copied to other cells in a spreadsheet. Now, to make a cell reference absolute, we put a $sign. That is before the column and before the row. Again, I'm giving an example shortly. The last cell reference is the mixed cell reference. And this is a cell reference which has either an absolute column and a relative row, or a relative column and an absolute row. Okay, practically, let me show you this to you. In our first place, you know very well spreadsheet has columns and rows. Consider columns as vertical segments and consider rows as horizontal segments. In Excel, columns are identified using alphabets, column B, column C, column D. Rows are identified using numbers, row 1, row 2, onwards. The boxes here are known as cells. If I click on the cell reference is the combination of a column letter and a row number. For example, the box I've clicked on is B1. The formula bar, rather the name box, asserts that I told you the name box is a part or a feature that displays the address of the cell. I can click on any cell as I look at the name box to see the address. Okay, now we've said there are types of three referencing. We have relative, we have absolute, then we have mixed cell reference. If you check critically here, for total, we wrote equals sum B2 to E2. That is what we wrote for our student who was Abdul. And when we pressed enter, we obtained the answer. But when we copied the answer everywhere using the autofill handle, let's check for the next student, Nadunga Sharon. If we click on the formula bar, Excel expands to give us the formula. Please note, the formula, rather the cell or function arguments, have changed from B3 to E3. We entered B2 to BE2, but now this has changed to E2. Even if I clicked on Johanna, that is row 6, and I clicked on the formula bar, you will note that our formula has changed. We entered the B2, but now we have B6 to E6 because on line 6. So these cell addresses which keep changing when utilized or copied elsewhere are known as relative. Now, there are moments when we don't want cell addresses to change. In some instances, we are performing calculation, but we don't want the cell address to change. In all our examples, the cell addresses have been changing while we perform the calculation as we try to copy elsewhere. So under that circumstance, therefore, we use what is known as absolute, because relative for it changes. Absolute cell reference is a cell reference that does not change. Now, how do we make a cell absolute? We say we make a cell reference absolute by putting $signs. An example here is a cell K2. Cell K2 here is cell K2 is relative, And you know a cell has got a column and a row, a combination of a column letter and row number. K2 here is a box where column K is colliding or intersecting with row 2. So for our case, this is relative because when we copy it elsewhere, it changes. To make it absolute, we have to put a $sign before K and $sign after K, that is before 2, to make it absolute. So that's the idea we're going to use. Position or ranking involves use of absolute cell referencing. Now, how do we compute position with that little guidance? You begin by putting the equal sign. Don't forget that. Formally, functions must begin with the equal sign. The function name we use to find position is known as rank. So you write equals rank. Thereafter, open brackets. Now, you note that you can rank using subjects. That is, if at all you are interested in analyzing the best student in these subjects, or maybe ranking who was number 1, number 2. You can rank using mathematics. But where you want to rank in comparison for all these subjects, then you need to use a column that has similar features. In our case, total here can identify all these marks or can help us analyze all the data because it is a summation of all these marks. So you can rank values either using total or using average, where you want to compare all the values in regard to establishing who was the best and who was the least in that class. That is your choice. So it is equals rank, and again Excel gives us the syntax, the arrangement. How do you write the arguments? The arguments is the number. First is the number, followed by reference, and followed by order. So what we are going to do after opening parentheses is to click on total, the first number, because we are finding the position of Madiwo Abdu. So we click on Abdu's, or the first student's total score, which is the number we are ranking. Please note that it is our choice to use total, and you can also use average if you're interested. So we click on the number we are ranking, and thereafter we put a comma. Immediately you put a comma, the next thing is the reference. The reference here would be all the students in that range. Since we are ranking using total values, having clicked on the first mark and you put a comma, the next thing is to select all the total marks, because this is forming our reference. It is forming our list, our class. Please, that's our guideline. F2, the first F2 is the mark we are ranking. According to the syntax, we put a comma. And then you highlight all, including that F2, all the marks in that range, because you want to rank these values. Then you put a comma and then choose your order. If you want the highest mark to be number 1, it is normally 0 for the order. If you want the highest, the first person or the best person, the person with the least mark to be number 1, you put 1. There are 2 orders. There is descending order and ascending order. Descending order, put a 0, and then ascending order, we put a 1. Now, if I close brackets and I press enter, I'll get the position of that person. Please wait a little bit. Now, let's try to copy this formula elsewhere. So if I click on the answer, and I use the autofill handle to double click, please note that if you check our function, if I click on this person and I go to formula bar and click on it to check the formula bar, let's analyze our function. It is equals rank F3, yes, that's the number we are adding, but note down Excel has changed the reference. Instead of beginning from F2, which is our complete reference, it has now adjusted the third column as F3 to F17, which is ideally wrong. These positions are wrong and not correct, because if you observe, Excel is changing everything. F2, the first F2, which is the number, should stand for the mark we are ranking. But after that, this reference I've highlighted, F2 to F16, is supposed to be fixed, should not change, because for every mark we are going to rank, we will be considering all the total marks. Now, that's where the idea of absolute or cell referencing comes in, to fix these cells so that even when we are ranking a given number here, the reference does not change. Now, how do we make a cell absolute? So, in our case, we're going to make absolute what is in red, because that is our reference. So we click in the cell and then press F2, F4. F4 is the keyboard shortcut to convert to absolute. And say absolute is formed when you put a dollar sign before a column and a dollar sign before a 2. In other words, when you put dollar signs in cell. Still, I'll click on F16 and I press F4 on my keyboard. If I press Enter key, wow, I have now position. If I click on this answer and use the autofill handle to copy it elsewhere, this is the correct formula. Let's try to click on another student and analyze that formula. So if I click on the first student, our formula entered is equals rank F2, which is the number we are ranking, put a comma, and thereafter it is F2 to F16. F2 to F16 is our reference. Because our reference is the same for all students, we have fixed it by putting dollar sign. And there immediately we put a comma and put 0 for the order. Now let me try to click on another student, that is on the 4th row. And I click in the formula bar to check the formula. This equals rank F4, because that is the value we are ranking according to our syntax. Immediately after opening parentheses, what should come first is the number you're ranking. You put a comma, then the reference. The reference here should include all the marks in that column. Then the comma, then the order. So F4 has changed. Initially we wrote F2, but because this is relative, we're on line 4, has changed to F4. But this has stayed F2 to F16. Let me try to click on the last student and you literally observe the last student is on F16. So if I click on his position to check here, you realize that is F16, correct, because that is the number we are ranking. But immediately after a comma, our reference is F2 to F16. That is correct, because the number should change, but the reference should not change, and our order is in the same order. Okay, that's how we compute our position using the absolute cell referencing. I want to give you another shortcut to end this video. That is on how to perform calculations still, how to compute position, but instead using the named range. Like I've said, you can use absolute reference or the named range. So I'll press Ctrl Z to undo, Ctrl Z to undo, Ctrl Z, so that I remove these answers. I've undone by pressing Ctrl Z. So we can always name a range of our values. For example, in the first place, I've used total to compute position because total compares all the marks. In the last scenario, I want to use average, but both yield the same answer. Now, when using a named range, begin by highlighting all the average scores. Begin by highlighting all the average scores. Then after that, go to the name box, click in the name box here, and give that range a name of your choice. For example, I'm going to give it scale. After typing my name, I press enter. That supposedly means that every time I highlight these marks, Excel will always use the word range. Anytime I want to use these marks, I can use the word scale to call that name I've utilized. So that is enough. When you give that range a name, all other thing is now very simple. So I'm going to click in cell L2 because that's where we're going to write our rank position, our rank function. Again, begin the function with equal sign or plus sign. Write the function name, which is rank, equals rank. According to our syntax, what comes immediately after the parenthesis is the number. So we click on the number, we are ranking, put a comma, and now our reference here is going to be the word scale. We have already told Excel that scale is our range. So when you write scale, automatically Excel will highlight equals rank G2, comma, scale. And finally, put a comma and put order. You want to rank descending order, that means the highest becomes number 1, put 0. You want to rank in ascending order, that means the least person, the person with the least mark becomes number 1. After a comma, put 1. Then when you're done, close brackets, then press enter. This formula, you can click on it and then double click. That's use the autofill handle to copy the formula elsewhere. Okay, that is all today in our video. Please don't forget, if you're new to this channel, please hit the subscription button just below this video. Please, if you have any question, please feel free to type in the comment section. I'll come and I'll help you through. I'll be reporting or guiding you through by responding. Then you can also consider hitting the notification bell to receive a notification whenever new similar videos are added. In the next video, I'll be sharing with you how to use logical function, how we use the H lookup, the V lookup, the X lookup to do grading. But that is it for analysis. Alright, see you in the next video. Teacher Dennis Kruger here again.